Welcome back to Thimbleberry U. I'm John Jagay, joined by Amy Wallace from Thimbleberry Financial. Good to be with you, Amy.
Good to be here, Jag.
So we're going to talk about deferred compensation today, and I feel like I'm going back to my algebra days with all these numbers and letters and 401k and 403b and XYZ, and I get so confused by this stuff, so unconfuse me, please.
It is confusing, absolutely. And with deferred compensation plans, there's really two kinds. The first is called a qualified deferred compensation plan, and I don't want to get into too many details here, but it's 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans. However, it is not an IRA, an individual retirement account. It is not that. Where I want to focus in this podcast is what's called a non-qualified deferred compensation plan, which is very different than a 401k or a 403b. Really, it's a plan for highly compensated employees, and the plan allows that employee to defer more income than they could with a 401k or a 403b.
That makes sense. If somebody's highly compensated, you'd like to be able to put more money away for your future. So who does this impact? Who, before we get into the details of it, who typically has these non-qualified plans?
Yeah, so I mentioned highly compensated employees. Their employer has to set the plan up. So at Thimbleberry Financial, our focus is on tech and healthcare. And so we see this most often on the healthcare side of our practice. There is one large tech firm in the area that also offers one of these plans, and it's known as the SERP, S-E-R-P plan. So I think the question you're really asking, though, is who is a highly compensated employee?
Yes.
A highly compensated employee is categorized by having earned over $130,000 in 2020 or was more than a 5% owner during the year. So with law firms, that can come into play, for example.
Okay. So I'm trying to get my head around this, Amy. Is this kind of like a second 401k for someone?
It's definitely a way to defer income like a 401k is, but it has different sets of rules. So yes, oftentimes someone who has a deferred compensation plan is also going to have their 401k or similar normal retirement plan through their employer. With one of these non-qualified deferred compensation plans, there are no limits from the IRS as to how much money the employee can set aside. An employer, however, may set limits.
Okay.
Also, unlike with the 401k or the 403b, where the money is deducted from your paycheck and deposited into an account that is in your name, right? You get your 401k statement or your 403b statement, you see the money went in. There is no deduction in income for the employee, as the employee never realizes the actual income.
Sounds great to me. So I want one of those deferred compensation plans.
Well, Jag, you got to hold your horses a little bit. You need a little more info.
Okay.
The reason that you don't receive that income is that you choose to defer that income to a later date.
Okay. It was too good to be true.
The money you're deferring is not set up in an account in your name. It's an agreement with your employer that they will pay you today's income at a future date.
So they're going to take that money that goes into this plan and pay it to me in the future.
You've got it.
Okay.
That's absolutely it. And that's, I think, the most important thing to know about a non-qualified deferred compensation plan. They, being your employer, are promising to pay you in the future. And so I think there's a question you have to ask yourself when you have a plan like this available to you. And that question is, would I agree to not receive a month of my income, a quarter of my income, half of my income, or any other amount, and agree that my employer can pay me in 5, 10, 15, or even 20 years or further out?
It seems a little risky.
I'd agree. If you answer no, then I'd say this plan isn't for you.
Okay, I've changed my mind. I don't want one of these.
There is risk involved, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, because you are making this agreement with your employer that they can pay you at a later date. You're agreeing to work for less money today with the promise of income in the future. So with these plans, when we talk about income in the future, sometimes there would be a growth rate on that. I think I've seen them without, but it's been a number of years. And you're able to set up a schedule oftentimes in order to determine how that money is going to come back out to you. So some employers only allow one schedule. Some employers allow you to have many schedules. Let's say you have one of these available to you in 2021 and you decide to defer $100,000 of income.
Okay.
Well, you have a child going off to college in 2025, or at least you anticipate you do, you could have that $100,000 paid out to you over 4 years starting in 2025 as a way to help pay for college.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. And then let's say you have a second child who's going to school in 2030. Maybe next year you say, I'm going to do $100,000 and I want that paid out over 4 years starting in 2030. Some plans will let you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Other plans will say, hey, guess what? Everything you defer is going to start paying out to you when you turn 65, either all in a lump sum or over several years.
So say it's $100,000 that I defer out of my 2021 salary. Can that amount of money go up or down with the market, or am I locked into what they would have paid me, what they owe me for 2021 whenever they pay it later?
Remember how it's not set aside in your name?
Uh-huh.
So it's likely to go up because there's likely to be some interest added to it.
Okay.
But that would not be market rates.
Okay.
I've also seen plans, as I mentioned, where I don't remember there being inflation on them.
Okay. So that's all set up according to the individual plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as cool as this sounded 5 minutes ago, there is, in some ways, it's if I'm putting that money away and it's not in my name, sometimes it feels a little bit like I'm working for free at this point.
Correct. And I phrase it that way because if your employer goes bankrupt, their creditors will be paid before you get this money back.
Oh.
So you and the other folks who utilize this non-qualified deferred compensation plan get paid if there is money left over.
You said if.
If.
I want to underline that word in that sentence. You said if.
I did say if. You are correct.
Good to know. Okay.
The thing to note is that the money the employer agreed to pay you in the future is not in an account in your name. That's why you're not getting taxed on it initially.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you defer the income. But as you've already pointed out, it clearly comes with some risk, right? And it's why I believe that question I stated earlier, would I agree to not receive a portion of my income today and agree that my employer can pay me at some point in the future, is so important. Now, there are people who are going to look at this and say, yeah, maybe. Maybe because my employer feels pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then you can dig into the company's financials to determine if the risk really suits you.
So this is a way to do things as opposed to somebody who might be more conservative and say, pay me what you owe me now, and if I want this money later, I'm going to save it, I'm going to invest it, I'm going to do with it on my own. But the advantage is, if you decide you're going to opt into one of these plans, you're not paying taxes on that income right now because it's not in your name. Got it.
Absolutely.
All right, so this is really complicated, Amy. It's beyond what we've already discussed so far. How do I decide if this plan is right for me?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Jag, I'll just share that, right? I wouldn't have a career if this stuff wasn't complicated.
Fair enough. Okay.
You know, we record podcasts every so often or every couple of weeks, and we're always talking about something that has some technicalities to it.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think this is something that you have to talk through with a professional that has knowledge. It is not something that you talk through with your HR department, your buddy on your team at work who also has this available, or the guy, you know, in your employer Slack channel who has all the answers. There's just a lot to consider. It's your risk tolerance, your cash flow now, right? Your cash flow in the future, your employer's financials, and how it ties into your financial goals and even more things. And I want to touch on that cash flow now and cash flow in the future because we didn't talk about that during, but that's so important because in financial planning, we map out for clients what their cash flow is expected to look like. Now, is it ever going to look exactly that way? No, right? It's a projection. And that's okay because a good financial advisor doesn't expect the numbers to be exactly that way. It's a guide.
Sure.
But if you're looking at doing this, you're going to set up income to come in the future. You need to know very clearly what your cash flow projections are, what your tax projections are, and how all of that plays a role.
you might want to minimize the amount of taxes you're going to pay, but you're going to pay more if you have more income, more revenue. And again, it's complicated.
Yep. And we have a tax bill that's going to expire in a few years. All of that comes into play too.
I really like what you said a minute ago, Amy, about not talking to a coworker, HR guy in the Slack channel, as you said. And we've talked about this before, but everybody's situation is different. You might have the exact same job at the exact same compensation as one of your coworkers, but one of you might be single and one of you might have a family. One of you might have aging parents you need to take care of and the other may not. So there are so many different variables that go into making everybody's situation unique. This is not an apples to apples comparison. Everybody's individual situation is different.
And this is a situation where you absolutely have to account for those differences. So I think you're making a very good point.
And if somebody wants to talk to you, Amy, about these non-qualified deferred compensation plans or anything related to their financial future, this is what you do all day, every day at Thimbleberry Financial. How does somebody find you?
They can find us on the web at thimbleberryfinancial.com or give us a call. Our number's 503-610-6510.
All right, I'm going to go work on becoming one of those high-income people, Amy, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good, Jag. I'll catch you next time.
Registered representative. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisor representative, Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated.